What does it mean to be an inconvenient woman? Is it possible it can be wildly beautiful? Come and take a listen as I explore this concept further. Welcome to your emotional makeover. Things your mother never told you because no one ever told her. I'm your host, Dr. Amanda Hanson. This is where you reimagine womanhood. Let us begin. So let's talk about what it means to be an inconvenient woman. Now, initially hearing that, it might sound like it has some negative connotation, and I understand that. But an inconvenient woman, if you spend the rest of this episode with me, you may start to have a completely different perspective as to what that really means. So I had a video that has gone insanely viral. We are well over 20 million views at this point. And it is in regards to what inconvenient women look like. Inconvenient women very often know their worth and they have set their own standards as opposed to falling for and living by religious standards, patriarchal standards, toxic beauty culture, all of the BS that actually sweeps women deeply away from their power and keeps them very robotic, following a whole bunch of rules for their life that actually, when push comes to shove, keeps you very far from not just your power, but everything that makes you this incredibly magnetic woman. When you are living by rules that have been set up in a system based on men or to sell you something, to keep you in line and to control you, trust me that it will be nearly impossible for you to live within those rules and those frameworks and feel incredible and feel connected to your divinity. We cannot fully feel connected to the beauty that we're inherently made with as women, our own unique traits of the feminine, when we are being controlled by a storyline that was built by men, whether that is patriarchy, religion, which those are often two in the same kind of thread, and also any kind of toxic beauty culture that has to build a system of fear to keep you robotically in line and purchasing without questioning. And so I want us to really think about, as you begin to step into any of the work in my world, and magnetic, I will tell you, is going to be the PhD in all of this. So for 2 days, the level of ceremony and beauty and ritual and deconditioning and pleasure and sensuality that will be immersed into those 2 days will shift something inside of the way you've been functioning as a woman. I am going to help you really remove all the layers of conditioning, all of the masks, all of the contortions to understand how and why we got here and the ways in which we get to move forward. Now, here is something I've been hearing from quite a few women in my DMs. They've purchased their ticket to Magnetic and they are so excited. And their partner is pissed. Often a male partner. Often someone they've been with for a very long time. And I see this over and over again when women sign up to work with me. There is so much objection coming from the male counterpart that they are in relationship to. And I think it's for good reason. I think it's similar to why the witches were burned in the 1600s, because when a woman starts to uncover all of the BS, refuses to continue living that way, decides to move deeply connected to her intuition and her power, she becomes incredibly inconvenient. She becomes harder to please. She also becomes a woman who sources so deeply from within, and a woman like that stops taking breadcrumbs. She starts desiring and requiring much higher level of reciprocity, of interaction, of intimacy, of connection, of conversation, of growth mentality. And that is why partners get so terrified, because they see that as the woman in their life who is stepping into something bigger for herself, they feel the fear, they feel the terror, they feel my gosh, I might be losing her, rather than seeing this as a beautiful opportunity. I find it so fascinating that so often the men get terrified of their woman's growth, of the woman they are connected to or in partnership with, rather than seeing it as an invitation for the growth of the couple. So if you have a partner who is fearing your growth, I would invite you to ask him or her, I'm curious if you can tell me why you go automatically to fear rather than excitement for what we can step into and what will be possible when I go into this event and I come back with all of these new tools and these beautiful ideologies and expansion from my life, and I share that with you and I start to make these changes. Can you imagine how incredible it would be for us to reimagine a partnership like never before? Going to a place and building something, building a legacy based on dreaming something bigger than we've ever even stepped into. So for those of you who have partners who are terrified about the work and the growth you are doing in your life, ask them to engage in conversation of the possibility of what you can expand into as a couple, and begin to be the emotional leader that showcases there is another way to consider this. I think so often that men see women doing growth and self-development as a rejection of them. And if they are deeply embedded in patriarchal structures, or if they are deeply in prince energy versus king energy, and they haven't done any work on themselves, they will feel your growth as a direct threat to them, as a direct threat to the relationship. I remember when this was happening in my marriage many, many years ago, well over a decade ago. And I remember saying to my partner that I was outgrowing the unspoken contract of who I was and how I came into the relationship, and that it would feel like a near death for me personally if I did not expand and grow. Now, my partner gets to decide if he wants to hear that as a direct threat to the relationship or as an invitation for us to grow together. And I remember saying that I cannot not walk this path. I would just as soon crawl in a corner and die. My life is calling me to expand so much bigger than how I'm living now. And I would love to look on the path and see you near me, not in the same way as me, in your own way. And I really hope that gets to be our story. And I also knew that if I looked on the path and he was nowhere to be found, and he was so far back in the distance, that it might be fair for us to agree that maybe we'd taken each other as far as we could. And maybe this was a place where our paths would need to go in opposite directions. I am not of the belief that every single relationship we enter is a relationship we have to stay in for the longevity of our lives. Sometimes, as I've mentioned before, we really have taken each other as far as we possibly can. And inevitably, both people have grown. But sometimes when we enter relationships, if we enter in that princess and that prince energy, and only one person grows and the other doesn't, it becomes a mismatch and we keep missing each other. And it's unfair to both people to try to keep forcing something. Sometimes the most beautiful thing we can do for someone we love is to release them and to admit that we have walked as far as we possibly can. But I remember saying to my partner back in that time, and that this growth was inevitable and it was something that I had to do. I felt like this caterpillar who was in the chrysalis, and I was bursting, and I was growing and needed to spread my wings and just start flying and soaring, that there was so much more for me in this life. And in that conversation, I remember saying to him, in the same way you run a business, And every year you are looking at new trends, at new marketing, at your competitors, at how to constantly expand and how to stay relevant. You're doing that every year in business, right? And he's like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't we do that in our marriage? Why wouldn't we do that in our relationship? Why couldn't we keep reimagining how it could keep expanding and changing? Because we are expanding and changing. It is humanly impossible that no evolution whatsoever is happening because more life has happened to us, more things have come our way. And you've either decided to interpret them one way or another. But we are forever expanding and evolving. And if the goal is to be in this for the long run, it is going to require us to evolve and grow together, to dream together, to set goals together, to imagine together. Now, that doesn't mean in every aspect of my life, I live a wildly independent life, as he does. But there is this space in between where we come together and we still dream as a couple. We dream as a family. We set goals and visions for the future of what that gets to look like. We get to come together and be each other's incredible support systems when we are both in the heavy waters of our lives individually. We are counsel and support to one another when we feel like there's no other place to go. That is what I'm talking about building. But the outside world would see that as a woman who has become inconvenient, as a woman who has become inconvenient herself, when I decided to completely upend and ditch everything in regards to the way I was living my life before, whether it had to do with beliefs around patriarchy or toxic beauty culture or body shame towards myself, all of the prisons I had locked myself in. When I decided to unlock myself, I was like a wild animal for a while, I will tell you. I was like this beast who had come out and was ready to explore and imagine in ways I had not been able to before because I put myself under these confines. I lost people along the way because my inconvenience, my no longer willing to stay silent about certain things, whether we were at a dinner party, at a big event, or just having people at our house, I was no longer as easy or fun or pleasing because I would call out many of the things that felt like misogyny, that felt uncomfortable, that felt disrespectful, that felt very small. And that made me inconvenient. That made me a little less fun. That made me not so easygoing anymore. And I had a choice to make. Did I want to go back into the corner of being the easygoing woman? Sometimes women will even call it, oh, I do it to preserve my peace. I personally can't preserve my peace when I abandon myself and when I abandon my daughter and when I abandon all of the women in the world, the collective women of the world, when I don't speak up or out in situations that are deeply misogynistic. I don't feel like I am preserving my peace. I actually feel like I'm betraying myself. So every woman will decide what feels most comfortable for her and how she wants to source through moments where before she stayed quiet and pleasing. Sometimes quiet and pleasing is also that you can preserve these fake friendships and fake likes. But as I'm sure many of you have heard me say a million times before, I'm not here for likes. I'm not here to be the most popular. I'm here to stop abandoning myself because far too many years I did, and it felt awful. And if I'm raising my daughter and my sons to not abandon their truth and themselves and to be as wildly free and authentic as humanly possible, then I surely need to model that in my own life so that they can see what that looks like. But the world will call me inconvenient. You know, even this book that I have written, there are many theories and things that I share inside of that book that are deeply inconvenient. That if you decide to step into the lifestyle that I am proposing, the lifestyle that I live and many of my clients around the world now live by and are the most free and liberated versions of themselves, people will initially call you inconvenient because you will have different standards by which you move in every aspect of your life. So I also want to propose this and share the idea that the majority of my clients who came into this work deeply terrified that they would outgrow their partner, many of them, they brought their partner along for their journey. And many of them have transformed their relationships in ways they could have never even imagined. I've even had clients who were already divorced when they started working with me, but then went back and reimagined a more beautiful way to co-parent with the person they had separated from or divorced from. I've had relationships rebuild themselves. I've had marriages where they've renewed their vows, where they have gone in directions they could have never imagined because they had partners who were willing to sit with the momentary discomfort of the woman that they love and her growth. But when it's reframed as an offering, as a hand extended, as a beautiful co-creation of a relationship and what we get to make together going forward, it doesn't have to feel like a threat. So I'm a firm believer that the women are the emotional leaders of this world, of our countries, of our families, of our bodies, of our communities, because of the innate fabric of who we are. Now, that does not mean every single woman. I realize that there are men who are deeply connected to their feminine side, and that is so beautiful. Inherently, that deep femininity that I see women leading their families with is often where I see the most beautiful, whole, connected, deeply rooted families being birthed from out of those spaces. We in our family have had some very big situations in the journey of our family life where I had to really deeply, powerfully lead with all of the feminine inside of me, with the parts of me that felt unexplainable to help anyone understand. I just knew the direction we needed to go, and I needed everyone to trust me that we would get there. And I often would turn to my partner and say to him, I would have an idea of how we needed to move forward. And I won't be sharing a lot of these stories because I do deeply respect the privacy of my family and a lot of the very personal things that have happened. But I remember in many moments that were very precarious, turning to my husband and saying, I need you to trust me on this one. I need you to follow my lead. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt this is what we need to do. And oftentimes, for onlookers, for extended family, for people in our community, I was being very wildly inconvenient. I was even labeled at times as being unhinged. Couldn't be more thrilled with those labels, because a woman who's inconvenient, a woman who has become an unhinged, is a woman to me who has decided that she will follow her innate system rather than the rules written by someone outside of herself. So when you're a woman who stops looking outside of yourself for the directions to your life or your family's life, people will call you inconvenient. But I had built such a sturdy foundation inside of our family and in my partnership that my partner was able to look at me in all of those moments and say, okay, this feels really edgy, or this feels uncertain, but I trust you. And because as an inconvenient woman, I built such a foundation of self-trust, and this is something I teach you how to do at Magnetic. I teach women how to go in and architect this profound level of self-trust so that even in the moments where I may be leading my family in something and the whole thing goes sideways, I unequivocally trust myself so much that I will source us even through the sideways moments. I trust that I will never abandon myself or my loved ones. And no matter how hard it gets, no matter how rocky the ship is, I've got us. I will always find our way through every storm. So there's another side that comes to an inconvenient woman. It's a very powerful woman who leads her family and doesn't abandon them or herself. So I want us to consider the range of what gets to be possible when women step into this kind of power and this kind of reconnection to their divinity. It's how we actually create the most beautiful outcomes for our families, for our children, for our partners, for our relationships, for our parents. Only once I became an inconvenient woman was I even able to reconnect with my dad before he died. Was I even able to resurrect and change aspects of my relationship with my mother? Only when I became an inconvenient woman was I able to say more of what it was I wanted in all spaces and places of my life, including my business. An inconvenient woman may go against the expectations from the patriarchy or the toxic beauty culture, but she's the most wildly free, which allows her to deepen into every aspect of relationships with herself and everyone who gets to be in her world and have proximity to her. So I really want us here in this world of the Midlife Muse brand to start excavating and unearthing and reimagining what it looks like as we think about the term inconvenient woman. How can we decide that inconvenient actually means free, actually means liberated? And what gets to be created in a free space, in a liberated space? Imagine what you're capable of in all of your relationships. So that's what I got to go to my partner with and say, as I become more inconvenient, imagine how big the canvas becomes for us. Imagine what is possible when I don't have this tiny little narrow space that I have to draw or color in. It gets to be limitless. And I do realize for a lot of people that limitless feels overwhelming and terrifying. It feels like way too big, way too much. Many people feel safer when there are guidelines by which they should be functioning. Some people who have grown up in very strict religions have been suppressed and indoctrinated from the very earliest times they can even remember. And because there wasn't a range of freedom, most people are terrified. Most people are afraid that they will go just completely crazy in their lives if they are given free rein. And more often than not, I do not find that to be the case. I find women to reimagine their lives in the most beautiful ways. And women do this thing where every time they learn something new or amazing, they take other people along with them. We have this way of bringing the best parts of what we have learned back to our communities, back to our sisterhoods, back to our families and our friends. And even if they're not ready to fully step in, we lead, we demonstrate simply by living our lives what it gets to look like. That's what I have done. I feel like I've become this walking revolution of what is possible. And everyone who loves me gets to peek in and witness it. And when and if they're ever ready, they get to decide that they too can claim that for their lives. That is why working with me, being in these spaces, being in the room at Magnetic will give you that proximity, will give you that imprint, will give you all of the tools and the examples of what this actually gets to look like. We can't imagine it just through conversation. We have to feel it. We have to feel that energetic transference. Magnetic is going to be this portal, this profound portal that you step into. And from the moment the doors open and you step in, you will already begin to feel the transformation of what is possible for your life. You will immediately begin recognizing how terrified and how small you have been playing all this time. And you will be given a roadmap that is so wondrous and so beautiful and so expansive that it will blow your mind and your heart wide open to think, wow, that even gets to be possible. And not only does it get to be possible, it gets to be the most beautiful way forward for everyone who is in relationship with you. I have never found this work with me to result in other people getting hurt. Women always come back even years later and tell me the stories of how they reconnected with people they had been disconnected from. They reimagined their relationships with their young adult children, even if there had been a lot of harm caused and there was a lot of heartbreak. I've had so many people come back and tell me that their relationship has been reimagined in ways they couldn't have even fathomed. Women come back and share the businesses that they have built, the connections they have with their body now. It continues to blow me away because a woman's expansion never hurts anyone else. A woman's expansion expands everyone else around her. And so for those of you who fear that being an inconvenient woman is a negative thing, I want you to begin to play with that word. What does an inconvenient woman actually mean? I feel like an inconvenient woman is just a woman who's finally woken up to the slumber that she has been in, to all of the belief systems that she absorbed that were never actually meant for her to absorb. She was not finding her way in her life because she was living by a set of rules that were never made for her. So when a woman decides to actually set down the rules that are incongruent to her life, the world will say that's inconvenient. But you and I know that's just her liberation, her stepping into her divine feminine, and her saying, I'm ready to trust myself and lead my life, my one and only life, on this path in this way. So if you hear all of that and there's something in you that just comes alive, if there's something in you that is deeply curious, if there's something in you that wonders, does it actually get to be that good? I have clients say that to me all the time. Amanda, I didn't even know life got to be this beautiful. I didn't know that it got to be this incredible and phenomenal and that I got to feel this free. I didn't know that if I lived like this, people would still love me. And actually, they love me more. And I'm now at a place in my life where I don't even have to set boundaries because I live in a way that my behavior is already the boundary. I could have never imagined it got to be this magical. If something in you feels stirred and curious, it's because you desire this for yourself. You desire to learn and understand more about how you get to decondition and deconstruct from all the rules that have kept you suppressed and to step into the woman who gets to be leading her life and leading the life that inspires everyone around her. If you are ready to finally unleash, if you are ready to finally become free, and for many of you and myself, inconvenient, then I encourage you to come to Magnetic. We are going to do the most revolutionary work in that room. And I assure you, it will be the template for how you live the rest of your life. I could never begin to explain to you everything that will happen in there because you wouldn't even believe me if I tried to tell you. You wouldn't even believe me that in 2 days we would journey in the ways that we're going to journey. But I have so beautifully crafted every single element to take you on an experiential journey that will effortlessly unfold and reveal itself inside of you. And every woman, it will be different, but it will reveal itself inside of you where it will be undeniable. Your greatness, your potential, everything that you were made for in this life will be revealed to you. It's going to be the most amazing 2 days. I will never be the same because of it, nor will any woman who steps into that room. So if you're ready to become inconvenient, if you're ready to become a leader, if you're ready to become the most magnetic version of you, then I will see you November 2nd and 3rd in Phoenix, Arizona. And I would strongly suggest you purchase your ticket before the prices go up again in September. I will see you there. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I would love to hear your feedback. Message me on Instagram or write a review. And of course, if you know a woman who could benefit from this episode, please share it with her, because it can heal her life. And that's what sisters do. Love always, Dr. Amanda.